Welcome back, Life Sciences, from your short break. We are revising and we're bringing up all those old things that we look. So the breaks are really important just so that the blood can flow and the oxygen can flow and can make us clearer. We are recapping the cell. We're going over all the important concepts. We've looked at the cell membrane and how things are transported across, specifically osmosis. We have looked at the cytoplasm, and as I said, we have looked at the cell wall in plant cells. And now we're going to carry on looking at what structures can we find inside the cell. Now, when we have a look at the structures inside the cell, they are called organelles, all right, little organs. And very often we get the name confused because when we say an organ, then you say, oh, the mitochondria. No, that is an organ is a muscle. The organ is the stomach. An organ is the the small intestine. An organelle is a structure inside the cell. Now, we find that the first structure, when we look at it, all eukaryotic cells have got the structure called a nucleus. And simply what the nucleus says is, this is our genetic material. Okay, this is the chromatin network. And in eukaryotic cells, the chromatin network, our genetic information, must be within a structure. When we looked at prokaryotic cells like bacteria, you will find that their DNA, their hereditary information is usually just found, all right, within the cell itself and not in a specific structure called a nucleus. The nucleus is a really important part of the cell. If a cell doesn't have a nucleus, chances are it's not going to work because it controls all the activities of the cell. However, there is one cell in our body that doesn't have a nucleus, and that is the red blood cell, right? But it doesn't need the nucleus. It just needs to transport oxygen and carbon dioxide. So we're going to not just bypass that one. So what have we got? We have an organelle, a structure in the cell that performs a specific function. So here, all the activities of the cell. The cell's activities, we give the word metabolism, how fast or how slow a cell does something. Right, what else will it have, the nucleus? Hereditary characteristics. And this is going to be very important, guys, because after the cell, you're going to look at the whole concept of mitosis. And mitosis is where the cell divides. Now, if a cell divides and you want to make, so if I have a cell and I want to divide into two identical cells, what must be identical? Their nucleus, because all the information is in the nucleus of the cell. So whether it's a plant cell, whether it's an animal cell, they're both going to have the nucleus. Then what we look at, we're going to find other organelles inside of the cell. Now remember what I said to you, each of these organelles is a specialized structure. What do I mean by that? Is they each have their own function. Right now, you might find that some cells might not necessarily have all of the different kinds of organelles. It depends on the function of the cell, what it needs. So an organelle, as we said earlier, is going to be, all right, a little structure that has a specific function. So all plant cells and all animal cells have the nucleus. What other organelles are we going to find? Now, in the plant cell and the animal cell, we're going to find this very important organelle called the mitochondrion. Now, if I say to you what all living things need to be able to do, I'm going to do Mrs. Krief again on the board. Right, one of the R's is cellular respiration. And what is cellular respiration, guys? That is our energy. Remember when you looked at biochemistry, right? Carbohydrates, we trap the energy, right? When we eat something, right? Why do we eat? Because whatever we've eaten, the sun's energy has trapped that. So when I eat something and it goes into my body, I need to untrap that energy. I'm like a car, right? And the energy is petrol. If I don't put the petrol in, my body is not going to go. My car is not going to go. So as I said, the mitochondria was a very important organelle that we're going to find. And what it did was this whole concept of being able to produce energy. Now, I've got a little question here that we can ask. It's a nice little simple question that we could possibly ask in an exam or a test. It says the diagram below represents a cell found in some complex organisms. Now, as soon as we see the word complex, we know that it is a eukaryote. The enlarged section represents an organelle. Now, guys, this is one of the trickiest things you need to do is very often you're given a diagram and you need to be able to see how the organelle is very often represented. It says the enlarged section represents an organelle labeled X. Now, you're going to find very often, if I go back to a mitochondria, that it looks a bit like a worm, all right? When I draw it, I always draw it looking like that. And that's very similar to what they've done over here. So let's say the enlarged section represents an organelle labeled X. Now, you want to know what the X is. The fact that they've given you a few of them is also a hint as to the answer. Okay, the first question is identify it, all right? And as I said to you, very often, if it looks like a worm-like structure, it is going to be the mitochondrion. Now, guys, what is the difference between mitochondrion and mitochondria? It's a singular and plural. You can write either. It is not a problem at all. State the process that this organelle performs. Now, you see the problem. If you don't know what the organelle is, then you're going to have a problem with the rest of the question. So the organelle we said was a mitochondria. What is the process? The process is cellular respiration. Okay, so that's a really important concept that we need to understand. Identify one molecule produced by this organelle and explain why, all right, this molecule is important to the organism. Now, we said, let's go back over here, that the process was cellular respiration. But although we haven't learned the process of cellular respiration, we've looked at the mitochondria and we know that what does it need? Have a look over here. I'm going to go two back. It produces ATP and we need it for energy. So if I go to this question, what's the one molecule produced? ATP. And why is it important? We need it for energy for our body to work, to function. So guys, all things in our body, anytime our body does anything to keep warm, to move, when we think, when we grow, when our cells heal, right, we need energy in order to be able to do that. Okay, then we're looking at the next organelles that we're looking at. Same as the mitochondria, we find these in both a plant and an animal cell. Now, these organelles have a very close relationship with each other. Now, later on, right, in your studies, you're going to have a whole concept of how proteins are made. Now, proteins are really important, and a lot of the proteins that are made in your body, right, are life-giving proteins like hemoglobin that you need to transport oxygen, or blood clotting proteins, or insulin that you need to help you with your sugar. So if you don't produce it, that could be quite a problem. So what do these three have in common? So generally, if I have a nucleus, the nucleus has these branching tubes that go throughout the cell, and they usually end at the end of the cell, And this, guys, is a transport. All right? It's a transport system for the cell. You'll see that it starts at the nucleus and usually might end at the cell membrane over here. Now, very often, and that is called, okay, this transport is called my endoplasmic reticulum. And I usually can abbreviate it to ER. Now, what else it does is, on the ER are little structures called ribosomes. They are non-membranous structures, and that's why they can be found in bacteria, the prokaryotes. Guys, ribosomes make proteins. Okay? And what happens is these ribosomes are on the endoplasmic reticulum. What can happen is they make the proteins and the endoplasmic reticulum can store them. Now, when we look at the concept of a protein is an extremely convoluted structure of, all right, when we come to look at how it's made. So what happens is when the ribosome makes the protein goes to the Golgi body or Golgi apparatus. And what the Golgi body does, it takes that protein and it packages it. All right, and it packages and it sends it, there we go, sends it out of the body, right, to be used. So these three organelles over here have quite a close relationship with each other. And as I said, we're going to see it in both plant and animal cells. Okay, guys, that's all we have time for now. We're going to take a quick break and then we'll be right back.